This is the sound of the busiest land border crossing in the world. Every day, more than 200,000 people walk through the revolving metal gates at the U.S. city of San Isidro and into Tijuana, Mexico. The resulting din from the gates is so loud and constant that many times U.S. and Mexican border officials can barely hear each other. Yet right alongside the noisy gates, there's a quieter way through. These 200,000 have just been handed a one-way ticket by the U.S. government back home to Mexico. It's a scene that many anti-illegal immigration activists and lawmakers want to see stepped up. Others, like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Council of La Raza, see it as a troubling trend. In recent years, immigration reform has become a hot-button issue across the entire American political landscape. A series of national marches and protests has drawn the issue out into the open, stirring emotional debates and intense political campaigning.
I'm not trying to justify wrong.
No, maybe I'll break into your house tonight, do your windows for you, and tell you I'm doing jobs you won't do, so I'm entitled to live there.
Yet as prospects dwindled for a comprehensive overhaul of immigration laws, the Bush administration unveiled a series of measures in 2006 aimed at demonstrating strengthened enforcement of immigration laws.
It's hard to get change. We need to get our politicians who say they're going to do one thing to really do it.
Since the ramp-up began, the fastest expanding category of deportee comes out of local jails from across the country, and few communities have taken to the idea of jailhouse immigration checks like Orange County.
It costs us a lot of money to warehouse them, somewhere between $7 and $11 million, depending upon how you count that. It's a pretty good chunk of money that the taxpayers are paying. About 14% of our jail population are individuals who are undocumented that have committed crimes, and a portion of that, obviously, are Mexican nationals. And I can talk to you about this whole issue of immigration from a national standpoint and what we should do with the borders, but that's a federal issue. There's some things we could do locally. The things we could do locally was go after those career criminals who are undocumented, kept coming back into our country committing crimes.
Yet an Orange County Register investigation has found that the spike in deportations coming out of local jails is structured more to spike deportation numbers rather than target serious crime.
Yo no soy criminal, yo no tengo ni fumo ni me drogo. Yo lo único que hago es buscar trabajo y traer dinero y comida para mis hijos.
Juana Guzman is facing a voluntary deportation after being detained by Santa Ana police after a domestic dispute involving her husband Jesse. Although the pair say the dispute was a misunderstanding, she was nonetheless identified as illegal and earlier this month left to Tijuana. Since then, her husband Jesse has been left to care for the couple's 7 children by himself. Others accused of petty crimes and deported were much like Erwin De Leon. Yet deportees like De Leon and Guzman are actually lucky because they have families on both sides of the border that can help them with money, a place to stay, and in some cases work. But for many, being dropped off without money at the public gates of Tijuana is just the start of a long ordeal. Many of the deportees will take the assistance of Mexican nonprofits that offer a network of shelters that can provide a few weeks' worth of food and a bed. Those living at the shelter often look for work during the day as laborers.
No, they dropped me off in Mexicali.
And just at the gate, just here you go.
And I was like, whoa, wait, immigration, what are you talking about, man? I didn't know how things went. And they dropped me off, and I only had 2 quarters in my pocket. Man, felt like crying. Felt like my whole body was shaking, my knees, my heart was pumping. I was like, man, what do I do?
It's a meager and in many cases dismal existence apart from family and struggling to survive. And as the number of deportees swells, Tijuana city officials are worried about the destabilizing impacts on them. They wonder why the United States is funneling nationwide deportations through border towns such as theirs.
Because right now they deliver into Tijuana. These people are not from here, so what they will do is rob people in order to get money, or sell drugs in order to get quick money and then get back to the United States. But if they send it where they come from, very to their home state, where very south to the Mexico, it will be hard to come back. You will make it harder to come back.
The biggest worry is that so many jobless and homeless new residents are triggering a spike in crime on the streets of Tijuana, already battling the impacts of well-financed drug and smuggling cartels. After many deportees have run out of days at the shelter and run out of money to pay for a cheap motel, they turn to the streets, and in the case of Tijuana, to the riverbed. Many of the deportees end up living in the tunnels that stretch out below the streets of Tijuana for miles. They do quick smash-and-grab type robberies from vendors and tourists, and then scramble back to the tunnels, where it's difficult, if not impossible, for police to chase them down. But for most, the immediate goal is simple: get back to the United States. And most make it.
If you're sitting there working at, say, Whiskey 2, which is it's just west of the San Ysidro port of entry, and you see a bus pull up, and you see the flavor of these people getting off, the tattoos on the necks and faces, the chins are up in the air, the chest out, they're still in shackles, and these guys are still acting, for all intents and purposes, like they're in control. We see them. We're the ones who catch them.
Ándale pues. ¿Tienes antecedentes penales? No. ¿No? ¿Cuántas veces has sido agarrado? Varias veces. ¿Eh? Sí. ¿Esa señora? Con la mano derecha.
But until nations like the United States and Mexico address some sort of regularized migration policies, the cat and mouse game continues.